Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegWatch by RegulatorWatch.com. It's crunch time for the candidates in the 2024 presidential election. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have less than a week to close the deal with voters. And many of those voters are nicotine vape users. And for them, the burning question is, will the next president say vaping? Joining us today to help answer that question is Tony Abboud, Executive Director of the Vapor Technology Association. Tony, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Brent. I appreciate you having me on.
Tony, we're going to try to keep this brief since I know you're beyond busy in this final stretch of the election. So let me ask you, how's it been going out there?
It's going very well. You know, we've been very focused on making sure that vaping voters understand where the presidential candidates stand on the issues, because we believe that vaping voters not only have played a role in prior elections, we know that in a race this close, they can play a significant role in this election. I mean, this election is going to be won on very small margins, is what all of the polling data has consistently been saying. Certain candidates have trended up, certain candidates have trended down, but the reality is that this is about as close of a race for president as we have seen in a short while.
Now, is vaping on the candidates' radar?
It's most certainly on the candidates' radar, and we have made sure of that. I think you've seen reported that we met with President Trump, and we were able to talk about the issues of vaping, why small businesses are currently under assault by the current administration's FDA. We were able to talk about the fact that in 2019, when he was being asked by his FDA to ban all flavored vaping products, he did something that was much smarter, which was to raise the age to buy all tobacco products to 21. And you and I both know what happened since then, right? The youth vaping rate in this country has plummeted 71%. So understanding that good policy can lead to good results, we focused on the need for action again at the presidential level because of the fact that this current FDA has really saw fit to make it impossible, or if they had their druthers, for consumers to have access to their favored and their flavored vaping products.
Now, you posted on your X account just in September a shot of you and the former president, Donald Trump, meeting in person. That must have been an interesting experience.
It was an interesting experience. We discussed a wide range of issues. He was very engaged on all things politics of the day. And he was very engaged on our issue. Again, we had the benefit of already having had to work with the former president in 2019. And he understood the significance of this industry in the United States. He struck a balance between what was being asked for at the time, which was banning flavors to protect kids, which we all knew wasn't going to be any sort of solution. And we gave him the alternative then of raising the age to 21, which he decided was a better way to go. So we were able to talk through that history and then also let him know the significance of what's happened since they raised the age to 21. And I think also be able to share with him kind of the fact that since he took those actions and since he saved the vaping industry in 2019, we have seen a continuous effort by this FDA to do everything in its power to shut down this industry. And so when you contrast those types of approaches, it was clear to him that he wanted to do something, and which is why he ended up posting something on his Truth Social.
Yeah, and what was that post that President Trump put out there?
He said something to the effect, and I'm recalling from memory here, but that he saved flavored vaping in 2019 and helped adult smokers quit. He mentioned the fact that the current administration is doing everything it can to crush small businesses. and he said that he will save vaping again with an exclamation point. We think it's very important for the presidential candidates to make statements to let voters know where they stand on this particular issue. I think that the issue is perhaps overlooked or would have been overlooked, but for the work that we have been doing to make sure that it was in the discussion as part of the current election process. We think that this is a health issue, that the FDA has got it wrong, frankly, and that real leadership is required to implement the types of changes that are needed going forward.
So let me ask you then about the Democrats and Vice President Kamala Harris. Do you get a sense that they, would be pro-vaping in some manner or another if the vice president becomes president?
Well, what's interesting is that the core issues that we talk about in terms of helping people quit smoking, the science of e-cigarettes and how it has reached a tipping point, the strong, almost unanimity amongst U.S. tobacco control scientists that say e-cigarettes have to be part of our smoking cessation toolkit, as well as the dramatic negative impacts that smoking has on vulnerable populations, particularly the African American community, the Hispanic community, the LGBTQ plus communities, as well as others that these same public health scientists in the United States have been talking about. That those core constituencies and those core issues really do resonate with someone like the President Harris, because they are part and parcel to the larger narrative that Democrats typically implement when they talk about issues of health equity and tobacco. What the hurdle has been is making them understand that this is not just about flavors and kids. This is a much more complicated issue. There are real people in this country, in these vulnerable populations, that are disproportionately impacted from the ills of cigarettes. And this FDA is doing little to nothing to ensure that these products are authorized and in the market and in their hands. And even worse than that, Brent, as you know, this FDA is using every lever of the federal government now to remove products from the market as aggressively as they can, despite the fact that millions of American adults are using them. And so it is very important for the Harris team to understand the fact that these are real issues that affect real people and that affect people that are, frankly, in traditional Democratic constituencies.
Yeah, so the challenge is that tobacco harm reduction could easily fit inside the Democratic policy milieu, so to speak. It's just that connection is not being made. They're focused almost entirely on the kids and the flavors.
Well, that has historically been the story from the Democratic side. That and the combined, major historic distrust of big tobacco companies. And so you take those two things together, and they have been a very potent message to try to pierce through. But I think we've had some significant success this year on a number of different fronts, both in Congress and with both presidential campaigns, in making it clear that these are issues that matter, not just to voters, but also to everyday Americans who are just looking for and desperate for an option to move away from cigarettes. So I think that we are clearly making progress here. We have a lot more work to be done, but I'm hopeful that based upon our discussions with the Harris campaign, that they too will see the benefit and the importance of letting the American public know where they stand on this issue.
Now, this is a question regarding both campaigns. In your mind, do they have an understanding about the FDA and the thousands of new combustible cigarette products that have been put on the market at the exact same time. They're not, refusing to pass, approvals onto vaping products.
Yeah, we obviously, ever since we came out with that initial report, which revealed the number of combustible products that the FDA has authorized during the span of the Tobacco Control Act compared to less harmful nicotine products, and particularly the 900 plus cigarettes that the Caliph and King FDA have authorized in the short time that they've been running that department. We lead with that. We lead with that all the time. That is probably the most damning fact, which they cannot, deny, and which they cannot explain away. And it puts, I think, the FDA on the back foot in terms of explaining what in the world they are doing. At one point in time, their mission was to end smoking in this country. Somewhere along the line, that changed to, we need to end all tobacco use. And I think if they rewrote it today, as currently constituted, they would write it as, we need to end all nicotine use. And that does not sit well with Americans. Americans, frankly, of every political persuasion, like to be able to make choices. They love the freedom to choose what they are going to consume or not consume, what they're going to put in their body and what they're not going to put in their body. And when it comes to tobacco products and the wide variety of innovative, modern technologies that include nicotine, they are simply not getting the options that they should. And there's only one entity to blame for that, and that is the FDA.
Now let's turn back to a bit of the politics, and actually more specifically the voter. Let's go back into the summertime. VTA commissioned some research that was done by Kellyanne Conway and her firm. And she, of course, is still a close advisor of Trump. But when he was in office in his first term, she was there in the White House. What was that research that you commissioned, and what were the results?
So we conducted polling in the battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And we asked voters, or she asked voters, a series of questions regarding their understanding of the issues and their understanding and perceptions of the issues. And then the polls, as they often do, will provide information to the listener. And then they are asked if that approach or that information affects their opinion in any way, affects their thinking in any way. And what she found was that there was an information underload, dramatic information underload, when it came to the American public's general knowledge of the benefits and potential benefits of e-cigarette products. And that when they were informed of things like what some of these public health scientists have said, like the science has reached a tipping point, or when they are informed about the largest clinical trial in the United States, which concluded that no matter how we looked at it, those to use the e-cigarettes had less harm and better chances of quitting smoking. That those types of seminal pieces of science actually dramatically changed their opinion. And what was most interesting is that many of them do not view the e-cigarette issue to be on the top priority list for government, and they are chagrined by the fact that so much effort is going into removing these products from the market. At the same time, they showed a significant understanding and willingness to change their opinion on e-cigarettes, particularly in the realm of saying what we need is a streamlined regulation that will allow science to be the focus of decision-making. And that needs to be put in place in lieu of this current process. And that tells us a lot, because it says, again, Americans want rational and reasonable regulation, which is exactly what VTA has been fighting for and focused on since our inception. And there are alternatives that policymakers and lawmakers should be looking at, much like when we talked in 2019. There was a strong support for raising the age to 21 amongst voters and a strong disapproval of the notion of banning flavored products. Similarly, this year, the number of people that are more interested in a smart regulatory scheme that doesn't include the banning of all flavored tobacco products disproportionately outruns the other. And so we've also learned that vaping voters can be single issue voters. And this issue is important to them and does affect the way that they think about who they are going to vote for.
Is there the same kind of momentum, the I Vape, I Vote thing that was in 2019 and into 2020? Has that softened a bit, or is it still there?
So I think what we saw in 2019 was kind of a diaspora of, maybe that's not the right word, but a dispersed I Vape, I Vote effort. Kind of some things primarily online, but nothing organized in terms of politics. What we have done this year is really put together, I think, the industry's first I Vape, I Vote effort. We have a website, ivapeIvote.us, which has some basic information, but the effort that we have been putting in has been focused on movable voters that are in 5 battleground states. And we have put together a universe of over 330,000 voters that we have been messaging to. And so that they are aware of what's at stake in this election. And they are aware that this is an issue that they should consider. And so this is truly the first direct, real, campaign-like effort, I think, that we put together with respect to the I Vape, I Vote.
Does the effort try to skew towards one candidate or the other?
No, the effort doesn't directly endorse a candidate, but because of where we know conservatives are on this issue, based upon all the work that we've done and the communications that we've had, it does skew towards saying vote conservative. And it does warn on the record of DC Democrats, which, as you know, even in the last month or so, we have whole hosts of Democrats from Congress that are filing amicus briefs with the Supreme Court, that are sending letters to the FDA, that are making public statements. One of the most salient things that was really exciting we did recently is we did an event at a vape shop with the Republican Senate candidate from the state of Ohio, Bernie Moreno. And it was remarkable that he was willing to come and meet with vape shop owners and distributors right there in their shop. And he spoke about the problems with an administration that wants to ban everything. And he had a laundry list of items that this administration keeps talking about banning, including vaping. And he also made clear what he believes in terms of standing up and defending the interests of small businesses in this country, like the owner of Cincy Vapors, who was so kind, Jeff Kathman, to open his shop to us. And also to what, he talked about some of the things that he would do to make sure, as he put it, that a bureaucrat from the FDA is not going to walk in that door and rain holy hell down on a small business. So we have been able to kind of generate some attention in some really key areas as it relates to this race. We have made our issue relevant to the campaigns, and the response has been very good.
Well, that's excellent to hear, on behalf of our audience out there that, wow, good to hear that the industry has been aggressively, proactively out there during this campaign to get the message across. Let me ask you this. You brought up change of mind. Did Kellyanne Conway have a change of mind?
I think like most Americans who have kids and are grappling with the various issues that kids bring to them, I think that it's fair to say, I don't know if she changed her mind, but I think it's a fair inference, only because look, I've talked about this publicly. I've talked about it in front of Congress when I testified earlier this summer. I have 3 kids, and I've had to, over the course of the last 10 years, not only navigate all the other issues that parents have to navigate, but I've had to navigate the issue of vaping as one of those many issues that we have to deal with. And I think that when thoughtful people sit down and actually look at the science and look at the policies and take into account where this issue fits in the larger spectrum of issues on which we have to parent, it becomes an issue that is much more manageable, and compared to other challenges that kids have these days, much less significant. And I think that when thoughtful people have that discussion with themselves, with their spouses, they realize that, no, there's something else going on here. And I think it also helps that obviously the youth vaping rate has plummeted. The action that administration took was so significant in terms of reducing youth vaping. I know that the Center for Tobacco Products Director wants to claim that it's all the ads that they have been running with their real cost campaign, which they've run for years without this kind of dramatic effect. And I'm sure that there are plenty of folks on the anti-vaping community that want to suggest that it's education that they've done that has helped reduce youth vaping. And I'm sure that it has had some effect. But I don't think that there's anything anybody can point to that is so dramatic in terms of a policy shift, such as raising the age to 21, after which time we saw a dramatic and continuous decrease in youth vaping, which means that it is not the same issue at all that it was before.
I think at this point, we should just talk a little bit about what some vapors believe is that they're a bit unsure of considering all the turmoil that was around the Valley crisis and some of the action that President Trump took at the time. They're not certain that Trump will have vaping's back. How do you address that?
I think he's already said he will. I don't think that I'm not concerned that President Trump will not keep his word when he takes office. This is an issue that he has had experience with, and if you remember, after the whole issue was brought to light, and then we had to kind of execute our campaign in 2019, and the White House meeting was over, and then they made a decision. There was reporting in the national media that said he wishes he had never touched the issue in the first place. So I think that you have, at least with President Trump that you're asking about, is someone who's been there and done that. He knows the challenges with respect to this issue, and he was unafraid to say, "I will save vaping again."
Yeah, after former President Trump put out that tweet in September, the Washington Post did quite a pretty big story on that, and they did bring up the fact that the way they framed it was that Trump caved to industry. And is that correct?
No, he was being given. We know to this day that the FDA had it wrong. We know that they've been wanting to ban flavors for a long time. They couldn't figure out how to do it. And we know that flavors actually help people quit smoking better than other products, and certainly much better than the FDA's only approved products that are on the market for smoking cessation. So he didn't cave to industry. What he did was he balanced the needs of protecting the public, in particular protecting youth, which is something else he mentioned in that Truth post. I forgot when we were talking about it earlier, but also the interests of the American industry and making sure that 13,000 small businesses, which were dependent upon sales of flavored vaping products, would not have to be shut down. Remember, we had presented to him the economic impact analysis. So all public policy is a balancing. And to this point in time, most public policy as it relates to e-cigarettes has been myopically focused on protecting youth and getting rid of flavors. He was the first one to say, no, we are going to look at this issue more broadly. We are going to protect youth, and we're going to protect businesses and the jobs that these small businesses create. That is an appropriate balance, and it worked, frankly. Going forward, we have to make sure that politicians and lawmakers understand that there is another balance that needs to be done right now. And that balance is the true path forward, because what the FDA has been doing has led this country, this industry, vapors into a very dark hole. Companies don't know what to do to get a product authorized. The FDA has been intentionally silent or opaque on its decision-making process, despite being called out by the Reagan-Udall Foundation. They have been intentionally opaque on really declaring the benefits of e-cigarettes and even encouraging Americans to try it if they can't quit some other way. Not a really bold statement, but they can't even bring themselves to make that tepid statement. And I think we're at a point now where the system has been broken by this current FDA, and it needs to be fixed in a dramatic way. And that is our hope, and that is our mission, is working on that solution going forward with whomever is sitting in the White House in January.
So, Tony, there was a big, huge front page article in the New York Times just like a couple of days ago, how Donald Trump is making big promises to big business, crypto, big oil, tobacco, vaping. Vaping was right up at the front. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, I think that obviously the media is picking up on the work that we have been doing at VTA this year. And they recognize that we have really made this an issue, as we were talking about in the election. And that in this case, the presidential candidate saw the value and importance of speaking about this issue to vaping voters. Don't forget, I mean, nicotine is very, very popular in this country. There are, as each of the candidates is going after very narrow and specific demographics and fighting over them, they have to find unique ways to reach them, because the big issues that are part of every that have been part of this campaign have already kind of settled voters on one side or the other, right? People, for the most part, know who they're voting for. If immigration is their top issue, they're voting one way. If the economy is their top issue, they're voting one way. If they're, whatever their issue is, if abortion is their issue, they're voting one way, right? They're settled on all the major issues. And so what we realized is that this was going to be a close race. And what we have done is design our efforts around the notion that this is a viable and a gettable constituency that the candidates can speak to in ways where they may not be moved on these other issues, where they may not be settled on these other issues, or they may be unsure who they're going to vote for on these other issues, or most importantly, they may not be high propensity voters. And that's where this race is going to be won, either in the margins, which everybody says is now incredibly small. For example, the number of independents that are now left that are movable are almost insignificant. But there is a whole group of voters that wouldn't necessarily vote, but may be moved to vote if the campaigns speak to them. And so what we were happy about with the New York Times article was it showed and validated the fact that the work that we have been doing has resonated, and that you have other big industries in this country that are acting in a way during an election year to try to promote their issues and protect their industries. And what we are doing on behalf of the vaping industry is no different or no less significant.
And that brings me to the question of this episode is, will the next president say vaping?
Well, if we have something to say about it, yes. I think that as I've tried to articulate here, this issue resonates with both parties for similar reasons and for different reasons. This issue is such a significant public health issue, the issue of cigarette smoking, that the FDA itself just last week held a meeting in which it declared the urgent need to address cigarette smoking. Now, if the FDA, after all these years, is holding an urgent meeting to address the need for cigarette smoking, or otherwise calling the need an urgent need to be addressed, and their solution is new drugs and new drug therapies that will take 10 more years, that tells us that under this current thinking, they're happy to delay the solution of that urgent need while another 5 million people die from smoking cigarettes. We don't view it that way, and we don't think that either thoughtful Republicans or thoughtful Democrats will view it that way in the next administration. And everything that we have been working on this year has been building to this particular point where we will be able to have an impact on coming up with a real solution that addresses the public's real need, not in a manner that the FDA wants to do it as they currently have articulated it, with new medicines and new therapies, but with the bird in hand. E-cigarettes, flavored e-cigarettes are right here. They're available widely. They are helping people quit smoking today. What is lacking is confidence that we have a well-regulated market. What is lacking is confidence in the product itself, because this FDA refuses to speak positively in any material way to adults about the benefits of e-cigarettes. That all has to change. They have to get out of the way and let the regulation, a smart, new, streamlined regulation, address concerns about safety and science, and then they need to make sure that the American public understands the benefits and the potential risks, and let them make choices. Right now, we have, I think, an FDA that doesn't believe Americans should be able to make choices. So the FDA doesn't want to give them the choices. And that is where we are at. And the only choices that FDA is giving Americans are the thousands of new cigarettes and other combustible products that they have readily sped to the marketplace. And they have not found the will, the way to get a wide variety of e-cigarettes to compete with smokers' desire to have more nicotine into the marketplace. So they're failing, plain and simple.
And final question, Tony. You mentioned choices. for the voters out there, if there's any undecided voters out there left, do you have any advice or recommendations for undecided vapers?
Well, I think that they need to, obviously they can go to iVape.vote.us and look at some of the information that we've put there. But I think that people need to be thinking about, how does this affect my life? What is the party that is most inclined and most willing to give me options? Which is the party that is most willing to say, I trust you with making choices. I'm not going to make you only choose between a cigarette and a wide variety of them to boot, and a handful of vaping products. Which is the party that's going to say, yes, you should be able to have a flavored vaping product, just like you can buy every flavored alcohol under the sun. And I think that will help make their decision. I'm not suggesting that this is the only factor in making a decision, but if you're in the balance, vaping is important to you. If you are a business owner and sales of vaping products are important to you and to your family that you support, then I think that once you make this analysis, you'll figure out what the clear choice is.